The sun above Africa was no ordinary sun. To the men of the Ninth Legion it was a punishing god, merciless and unblinking. Their armor, once polished to a bronze gleam, now burned against their skin. Each blade a furnace pressing into flesh, sand stuck to their lips, their tongues swollen and dry. For 3 days the Legion had marched east of Carthage, sent on a mission whispered only in the ears of their centurion, Marcus Varro. They did not know their true destination, only that the orders came stamped with the seal of Rome itself. And for Rome, they would endure. But endurance had its limits. Men stumbled, their sandals torn, their shields heavy as stone. The standard-bearer still carried the crimson banner high, though it sagged in the windless air. When a soldier collapsed, his comrades did not look back. To halt meant death, for there was no water. No shade, only dunes that rose like waves of an endless ocean. The desert swallowed men as silently as the sea. Centurion Marcus rode at the head. His eyes narrowed beneath a battered helm. He was a man carved from discipline. Every scar on his face a story of loyalty to Rome, yet even he could not deny the unease in his gut. These lands were not marked on Roman maps. Local guides had refused coin, muttering of curses, of temples swallowed by the sands where no man should tread. Marcus dismissed them as superstition. And yet, when he looked across the dunes, he swore the horizon shifted, shadows sliding like serpents beneath the sun. At dusk they camped in silence. Fires would not light. The wind smothered sparks. The men whispered of omens, the circling vultures, the silence of the jackals. One soldier claimed he saw a figure at the ridge, cloaked in sand, watching them. Others spat, cursing him for fear-mongering. But Marcus lay awake long after, staring into the dark. He too thought he had seen eyes gleaming in the distance. Rome had sent them to conquer, but the desert seemed ready to devour. The storm came without warning. One moment the dawn broke with pale light. The next the sky darkened as though a giant hand had smothered the sun. The Legion closed ranks, shields raised, but the desert was no battlefield. Sand slashed at their eyes, filled their mouths, buried their tracks. Men screamed for each other, their voices stolen by the howl of the wind. Standard-bearer Lucius clung to the crimson banner, but the gale ripped it away, vanishing into the storm. Rome itself seemed lost. Hours passed or minutes. Time no longer held meaning. When the storm relented, the Legion found themselves scattered across a dune that had not existed before. The desert had shifted as if alive, and there, revealed by the wind's fury, stood stone. At first it seemed a mirage, but as the sand slid away, they saw it clearly, a colossal arch, carved from black basalt half buried in the dune. Its surface crawled with strange symbols, not Roman letters, not Greek, but something older, jagged and sharp as if the stone itself had bled to form them. The men gathered in awe and dread. By Jupiter, one whispered, tracing the carvings. The grooves were deep, still sharp as though no centuries had passed. At the arch's peak was carved a face human, but twisted, its mouth open in a silent scream. Centurion Marcus studied it with grim resolve. A temple, he said. Perhaps to Baal or some forgotten god. Whatever it is, Rome commands us forward. But Nerva, the youngest soldier, trembled. It should have stayed buried, he muttered. The storm uncovered what the earth meant to keep hidden. His words spread unease. Men shifted their shields, their eyes darting to the horizon. The silence of the desert pressed in, broken only by the hiss of shifting sand. Marcus raised his sword, his voice hard. We are Rome, no storm, no god. No curse will bar our path. Yet as they passed beneath the arch, a wind sighed through the stone, carrying a whisper none could name. But all felt in their bones. Turn back. Beyond the arch, the dunes fell away into a valley no Roman map had marked. At its heart lay ruins, pillars cracked and leaning, statues half buried, their faces eroded into masks of sorrow. The temple itself loomed vast, its roof collapsed in places, its walls carved with sprawling murals. The men entered cautiously, boots crunching over shattered stone. Torches flared weakly as though the air resisted flame. The murals told a story. At first, scenes of triumph, warriors bowing before a mighty king, a city crowned in gold, feasts beneath the sun. But as the walls stretched deeper, the tale darkened. The king became monstrous, his crown sprouting horns, his people bound in chains. Rivers ran red, the sun blackened. And at the final wall, the king stood alone, his arms outstretched, while shadows consumed all. Beneath the image, words were etched in jagged script. Blood built this throne. Blood must keep it. The soldiers shifted uneasily. Rome worshipped victory, but not at this price. Marcus ran his gauntlet over the stone, his jaw tight. "It is nothing," he growled. Stories to frighten children. Yet even he felt the weight of the walls pressing in. The air smelled of iron like old blood. The men set camp at the base of a colossal idol that dominated the temple. A figure seated on a throne, its eyes inlaid with obsidian, its hands outstretched as if waiting to receive an offering. Cracks marred its chest, and through them gleamed faint traces of red, as though something within pulsed still. Nerva dropped his torch in fear. "It breathes," he whispered. The flames sputtered out, leaving the idol cloaked in shadow, and in that silence, the Legion heard it a faint, steady beat, like the echo of a heart that had never stopped. The 9th Legion had faced Gauls in the forests, Parthians in the desert, and rebellions in their own streets, but nothing had prepared them for this idol. It towered above them, carved from a single block of black stone veined with red, as though the earth itself had bled to create it. The figure was neither man nor god, its form unsettlingly human yet stretched, its face hidden behind a crown of jagged horns. The eyes, 2 gems of obsidian, gleamed even in darkness, reflecting the torchlight with cruel intelligence. Its outstretched hands seemed ready to cradle the men themselves as an offering. Beneath it, the floor was stained darker than the surrounding stone, as though centuries of blood had seeped into the cracks. The soldiers tried to mask their unease with laughter, boasting of the spoils Rome would claim from such a place. "If the priests feared this thing," one muttered, "then it is worth more gold than the Senate's vaults." Another spat on the floor, declaring, "Rome bows to no idol." Yet their bravado rang hollow. Even hardened veterans kept their hands near their blades, eyes darting to the shadows. The temple air pressed in thick, carrying a copper tang that made their tongues taste of iron. The torches hissed, burning lower the closer they drew to the idol, as if the stone drank the fire's strength. Marcus ordered a perimeter. "No man touches it. We rest, then march at dawn," but rest eluded them. The moment they lay down, they heard it, a heartbeat. Faint at first, then louder, steady as a drum of war. Some claimed it came from the walls, others swore it pulsed within their own chests. When Lucius, the standard-bearer, placed his hand upon the idol's cracked chest, his eyes widened. "It is warm," he whispered. The men cursed him for a fool, but he insisted. "The stone breathes." Panic spread. Some soldiers demanded they leave, to burn the place and flee back to the safety of the dunes. Others argued the gods had led them here for conquest. Marcus silenced them with a raised hand. He himself had touched the idol when no one watched. And though he would never admit it, he too had felt the warmth, as if the stone contained not death but life. As the torches sputtered, a drop of liquid slid from the idol's hand, thick and dark, spattering onto the stone floor with a hiss. The men froze. It was blood, fresh, warm, impossible. The idol leaned ever so slightly forward, and the chamber filled with the echo of a heartbeat that was no longer faint, but thunderous, demanding, alive. The Legion woke in terror. One of their own lay dead at the idol's feet. His name was Gaius, a veteran who had marched with Rome since Britannia. Now his body was broken as though crushed, his armor bent inward, his chest caved beneath an invisible weight. Blood pooled around him, trailing upward across the floor as though the stone drank it eagerly. The men recoiled, making the sign of Jupiter across their chests. But the desert god they had invoked did not answer. The air itself seemed to hum with satisfaction. Marcus stood above the corpse, his face grim. He ordered silence, but whispers spread like wildfire. The idol took him. "The god demands blood." Nerva, the youngest, trembled openly. "It is sacrifice," he said. "The walls said it, blood built this throne, and blood must keep it." His voice cracked, yet the words carried truth. The murals had spoken, and now Rome paid the price. Some men demanded they destroy the idol, but when one soldier raised his sword, the blade shattered before it touched stone, splinters of steel embedding into his arm. He fell screaming, his blood joining Gaius's on the floor. The idol seemed to pulse brighter as though fed. Fear splintered the Legion. Half wanted to flee, to abandon the mission and curse Rome for sending them here. The others, led by Lucius, believed the idol was a god greater than any they had known, one that Rome must claim for itself. "If we bind this power to our empire," Lucius declared, "no enemy will stand against us. Not Parthia, not Carthage, not even time itself." His words stirred greed in weary hearts. Some nodded, imagining the Senate bowing before them as conquerors of not just men but gods. Marcus watched his legion fracture, loyalty slipping through his hands like sand. He barked orders to restore discipline, but his voice rang hollow beneath the thunder of the idol's heartbeat. That night, as the men argued, a low laugh rippled through the chamber. It did not come from Marcus nor Lucius nor any soldier. It came from the idol. Its mouth once sealed in stone shifted, cracks opened where lips should have been, and the sound that spilled out was not laughter but hunger. A whisper followed, curling into every ear. One is not enough. At once, the torches flared red, bathing the temple in bloody light. The men stared at one another, their faces pale. The god demanded more, and none could deny it. Discipline was the soul of Rome, but in that cursed temple it cracked. The 9th Legion split before Marcus's eyes. On one side, Lucius rallied men to embrace the idol. He spoke of empire eternal, of legions that could never be defeated if they harnessed the power within the stone. His voice dripped with conviction. His eyes glowed with fanatic fire. Men who had once bled for discipline now raised their fists in agreement, swearing oaths not to Rome but to the black throne before them. On the other side, Nerva begged the legion to flee. "This is no gift of the gods," he pleaded. "It is a trap, a hunger that will never be sated." Some listened, their faces pale, their hands trembling as they remembered the blood on the floor. Marcus stood between them, torn. His duty was to Rome, but what was Rome? Was it the Senate that sent them here to die in silence? Or the men before him who demanded leadership? His chest ached with the weight of choice. If he ordered retreat, half would brand him coward. If he seized the idol, he might unleash ruin upon the world. Yet hesitation was weakness, and Rome punished weakness with death. The men turned on one another. Blades were drawn, shields raised. Brothers who had marched side by side now faced each other as enemies. The temple filled with the clang of steel, the cries of rage and despair. Blood sprayed the walls, feeding the murals which seemed to writhe in delight. The idol's heartbeat thundered, faster now, echoing like drums of war. Marcus fought to restore order, striking down 2 of his own men when they ignored his command. He bellowed above the chaos, his voice raw, "You shame Rome!" But the legion no longer heard him. They were deaf to reason, drunk on fear and greed. When at last the fighting paused, bodies littered the floor. Friends, comrades, brothers in arms, all dead by Roman hands. The survivors stared at each other with hollow eyes. Lucius spat blood and raised his sword toward Marcus. "Rome is dead," he snarled. "Only the god remains." Behind him, the idol's mouth twisted wider, revealing teeth of stone slick with red. And as its whisper coiled through the chamber once more, Marcus knew the 9th Legion was no longer his to command. It belonged to the shadow that watched from the throne. The night fell heavy within the temple, though no stars shone above and no moonlight pierced the cracked roof. Torches burned with sickly red flames, hissing as if drowning in invisible water. The idol's heartbeat pulsed louder than ever, shaking dust from the rafters, rattling the bones of the fallen strewn across the floor. Marcus ordered the survivors to form ranks, shields interlocked, but even the proud wall of Rome could not hold back shadows. They came crawling from the cracks in the floor, slithering from the murals, seeping from the very breath of the idol itself. At first they were shapes without form, long claws stretching, faces flickering like smoke. Then, as the soldiers braced, the shadows hardened into figures wearing the armor of Rome itself, dark, twisted reflections of the legion. The first clash came sudden and brutal. A shadow soldier hurled itself against Marcus's shield, its eyes hollow pits, its mouth gaping in a silent scream. His sword pierced its chest. But instead of falling, the figure split into 2, each grasping for his throat. Across the temple, screams rose as comrades were dragged into darkness. Men who had marched for decades, hardened veterans of Rome's wars, now fought phantoms that multiplied with every strike. Lucius roared, cutting down shadow after shadow, but his laughter was unhinged, wild, as though he believed himself chosen. "Do you see?" he cried. "The god grants us endless enemies so we may prove our strength." Nerva huddled near the idol, clutching his sword like a child clutching a toy. "It wants us broken," he whispered, though none listened. Blood slicked the stone, feeding the cracks. Every fallen Roman rose again, not as man but as shadow, their eyes glowing red, their mouths whispering in languages no living tongue knew. The legion collapsed upon itself, outnumbered by its own dead. Marcus fought with desperate fury, cutting down the twisted form of a soldier he had once trained as a boy. Each strike hollowed him further. Each scream of his men carved a wound deeper than any blade. And above it all, the idol's laughter boomed. Not sound, but sensation, vibrating through marrow. The Ninth Legion was devouring itself, and Rome was powerless to save them. Amid the chaos, Marcus carved a path toward the idol. Blood drenched his armor. His shield split, his sword chipped, but he pressed forward with the last dregs of Roman discipline burning in his chest. He reached the throne where the idol loomed. Its mouth stretched into a grotesque smile. Obsidian eyes burning. Lucius appeared beside him, his own armor cracked, his face smeared with blood and ash. "Do not resist it," Lucius hissed, his voice breaking. "This god is not enemy, it is Rome reborn. With it, we will be eternal." He raised his blade toward Marcus, trembling with madness. "Bow, brother. Bow or be broken." The centurion stared at him, torn between fury and grief. Lucius had been his comrade since Britannia, a man he had bled beside, trusted. Now he was a zealot, drunk on shadow, blinded by promises of power. Behind them, soldiers screamed as they were dragged into darkness. Marcus clenched his jaw. "Rome is eternal because men like us bleed for it. Not because we kneel to stones." Lucius snarled and lunged. Their swords clashed with sparks that lit the idol's face. Blow after blow, the temple echoed with the sound of steel and betrayal. Marcus fought not only for survival, but for the soul of his legion. At last he struck true, driving his blade into Lucius's chest. His old friend gasped, eyes clearing for one fleeting instant. "Perhaps." "You are right," he whispered, before collapsing into Marcus's arms. But before his body hit the floor, it dissolved into black smoke consumed by the idol. The god's voice filled the chamber, dripping with delight. "Every choice is mine. Every death feeds me." The obsidian eyes burned brighter. Marcus fell to his knees, trembling, his sword slick with blood. The idol leaned forward as though alive, its voice wrapping around him like a serpent. "Choose, centurion. Lead your men to me and Rome will never fall. Resist and you will be forgotten as dust." Marcus lifted his gaze. Around him the Ninth Legion crumbled, swallowed by shadows. He clenched his sword, heart pounding. He could lead them to damnation or defy the god and let Rome lose an entire legion in silence. Either path was ruin, but still, he whispered through bloodied lips, "Rome kneels to no shadow." And he raised his sword once more. The idol roared. The sound was no voice but an earthquake, shaking pillars, splitting stone, collapsing walls. The Ninth Legion, what remained of it, screamed as the temple itself turned against them. Shadows poured from every crack, devouring men whole, pulling them into pits that had not existed moments before. The murals bled, rivers of crimson spilling onto the floor, flooding the chamber with the stench of rot. Marcus bellowed commands, rallying survivors into a last stand at the center of the hall. Shields locked, spears thrust. They fought not for Rome now, but for the dignity of dying as soldiers rather than prey. Nerva clutched the crimson banner, the standard of the Ninth, refusing to let it fall even as shadows clawed at him. "Rome must see us still," he cried, his voice breaking. His defiance lit a spark among the men. For a heartbeat they fought like lions, driving back the phantoms with sheer will. But the idol's laughter drowned them, and one by one their torches extinguished. Darkness swelled, swallowing cries, choking prayers. The ceiling split open, sending showers of stone crashing down. Entire cohorts vanished beneath rubble, their screams silenced before they finished. Marcus fought until his arms gave out, his sword nothing but shards. Blood blinded his eyes, and yet he stood roaring into the void. "We are Rome." His words echoed, defiant, swallowed by shadow. The idol leaned forward, stretching impossibly, until its face filled Marcus's vision. Obsidian eyes bored into his soul. "Rome is mine," and it whispered. And then the temple collapsed entirely, burying men and God alike in an avalanche of stone, sand, and silence. The desert swallowed the ruins, erasing all trace. The Ninth Legion had fallen not in battle against men, but consumed by something older, darker, nameless. Centuries passed, and the desert remembered nothing. Sand shifted, dunes rolled, and empires rose and fell. Yet the story of the Ninth lingered, whispered by nomads and traders. They spoke of a Roman legion that marched east and vanished, leaving behind no bones, no banners, no trace, only silence where once had been an army. Scholars dismissed it as myth, another tale swallowed by time. But sometimes, when storms raged across the dunes, travelers swore they saw shadows marching in the distance, ranks of soldiers, armored in black, their banner tattered crimson, their eyes glowing faintly red. In Rome itself, the Senate struck the Ninth from the rolls. Their name cursed, their service forgotten. Families received no word, only silence. Yet among the veterans who had once marched with Marcus, Whispers persisted. They said he defied a god, that he chose loyalty to Rome even as the desert devoured him. Some called him hero, others fool. But all agreed on one truth. The Ninth Legion had not died as men. They had been claimed. And still, in the deepest desert, locals avoid a certain stretch of sand where no bird flies, no beast crosses, where the air tastes of iron, and the ground trembles faintly like a beating heart. They call it the Valley of Shadows. Those who wander too close swear they hear footsteps, the clash of shields, the murmur of Latin prayers twisted into screams. Some even claim they have seen a figure, standing at the edge of the dunes, a centurion in broken armor, his sword raised, his banner torn. His mouth moves, but no sound comes, and behind him an army of shadows waits, endless, eternal. Thus the Ninth lives on not in Rome's marble halls nor in triumphal songs, but in the whispers of the desert and the nightmares of men, their fate a warning carved into silence, that some gods are older than empires, and Rome itself was but a child before the throne of shadows.